Luke chapter 20, we'll begin, we'll discuss here in a few minutes, verse 47. We discussed last week, beginning in verse 45, Jesus has turned his attention to his followers, his disciples, I believe he calls them in verse 45. And he gives them a warning about the scribes. And he tells them to beware of these scribes. And we went to Matthew chapter 23 last week, and we'll go there again this morning. Matthew chapter 23 is a more extended version of what we have here in Luke chapter 20. But be aware of these scribes, who they really are. You know, they are the religious teachers of that time. Sometimes they were described as lawyers. They were people who knew the old law, that they knew the law of Moses. They were lawyers in that sense. And because they were the teachers, they had access to the old law. Everybody didn't have a copy of the old law. A lot of them, I'm sure, couldn't read and write. And so these teachers knew that they were needed by the people. And sadly, that went to some of these teachers' head. You know, they were the religious elite. They knew the law. People depended upon them to teach them the law of Moses. And so, you know, I'm just needed here. I wonder where Edgar is. I've just mentioned Miss Edgar. Maybe he'll be here in a minute, and Brenda. But at any rate, these people began to think that they're really something. And that, of course, is human. People depended upon them. And so as a result of that, they thought that they were maybe elevated above everyone else. They desired to have the high seat in the synagogue. You know, we got that little 2-seater, 3-seater thing back there. It used to sit right up here. And nobody sat on the thing because, you know, to me that was an exalted seat. It was an exalted position. Who wants to look at the song leader sitting up there? Who wants to look at Andy the preacher? Either one of us are much to look at, Linda, so we don't use that seat. But at any rate, that didn't bother these scribes. You know, the chief seats at a feast, you know, they're going to sit at the head of the table. Just expected, you know, that's where they deserve to sit. But now turn with me, and before we get into verse 47, let's go back to Matthew chapter 23. Notice what Jesus says about these type of folks. Matthew chapter 23, he tells them there, turn one page back, you know, they love the greetings in the markets. This is verse 7, Matthew chapter 23. They love to be called rabbi. You pass him on the street, hey, rabbi, hey, teacher. There's my teacher right there. And he loved to be pointed out like that and to be called teacher or rabbi. But Jesus tells them here, verse 8, don't be called rabbi. Verse 9, don't call any man upon this earth your father. In a spiritual sense, we have one spiritual father which is in heaven, verse 9. Verse 10, don't call anybody your master, because one is your master, and that would be Christ Jesus. Notice the conclusion, though, of verse 8. Don't call anybody a rabbi, because all of you are brethren. We're all just brethren. We're all the same. That's one of the reasons that we don't have the Right Reverend Addison over here with us this morning. We don't call him Andy Reverend. Andy's the same as all the rest of us. And, you know, I'm not the exalted teacher this morning. That wouldn't even apply to me. That would be ridiculous. But we're all brethren. We're all the same. And don't try to tag on these positions, these titles to yourself. And don't think more of yourself than you need to think. Notice verse 12, though. Matthew 23 and verse 12. Jesus tells us here, and he's talking about these scribes who they think they are. Whosoever shall exalt himself, he's going to be abased. And he that's going to humble himself, well, that's the one that's going to be exalted. Whoever will exalt himself, he's going to be humble. That's what abased means. Abased means to be reduced or lowered down or to bring down off of their high horse, maybe. You know, to reach the pinnacle. There's Edgar right there. Edgar, we just missed you. Glad you're here. How's Brenda doing?
She's coming.
She coming? Okay, well, good. That's good. Brenda's going the 9th of January, which is a little over a week from here. We're in Matthew chapter 23, verse 12. We noticed last week from 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 4, where the Apostle Peter tells us there, instead of worrying about how we look on the outside, fixing her hair and putting on all the jewelry. And this applies to men and women. The men are just as bad as the women. I'm not talking about women. But instead of worrying about what it looks like on the outside, what God values is the hidden person of the heart. That he described it as a meek and a quiet spirit. That meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God, of great price. That's what God's looking at. He don't care what we look at. I still need a haircut, Linda. I was going to get one last week. I ain't got it yet. We got to wait till the 1st, till our check comes in. We can get a haircut. Well, the barber's been sick, actually. But we need that humble and quiet spirit. There's the Joneses. Kyle, good to see you. But notice Philippians chapter 2. Philippians chapter 2. We're to imitate Christ in our life. Christ was the Son of God. He had something that he could exalt himself about. Did he need to humble himself? He's the Son of God. Philippians chapter 2, beginning in verse 3, Paul tells us here to let nothing be done through strife or vainglory. What's vainglory? Excessive glory, excessive vanity.
Prideful.
Very prideful, excessive pride. And I would think that would describe these scribes who loved to be called rabbi in the streets and who wanted that best position in the synagogue. I mean, don't even think about sitting in my seat, Linda. I sit right here. Don't sit. That's mine. So everybody can see me, Andy.
The word conceited. They were so of themselves.
Ooh, yeah. Very, very much so. People like that today. Yeah, they are. But notice, Philippians chapter 2, verse 5. Instead of have all this excessive pride about yourself, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. Now we're talking about God's Son here. He could have had excessive pride. He's God's Son. Who being in the form, this is verse 6, who being in the form of God, he was in the form of God. He's God's Son. Notice verse 7. But he made himself of no reputation. Shouldn't he have bragged about that? Shouldn't he have bragged about that? There goes the Son of God right there. And, his pride. But notice. Made himself of no reputation. He took upon himself the form of a servant. He was made in the likeness of men. He became a human being. And just because he was God's Son, he became a servant. Verse 8, and being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself. He became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. Now notice the result of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, not exalting himself, taking upon himself as the form of a servant. He humbled himself. He had this meek and quiet spirit. Wherefore, verse 9, God has highly exalted him. Will the Lord do that for us today? As we possess a quiet and a meek spirit. As I'm not just overly proud of myself. Pride is something that's built into all of us, and it's something that we can't control. But yeah, the Lord will exalt us today. He exalted his own Son because he took upon the form of a servant, and he humbled himself as a person. Now that of course, is something that's hard to do for us as people. We want to think highly of ourselves, and we should to a certain extent, but let's don't go overboard with that. James chapter 4 and verse 10, I don't forget what that says, Andy, but if you humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, he'll offer you due time. I think that's what that says, something like that. Matthew chapter 11 and verse 29, Jesus says about himself that he's meek and lowly in heart. And sometimes we stumble over that. Sometimes today we seem like we need to be recognized. I need to be recognized for who I am here. Well, we're all brethren. We're all the same. Nobody's any different, We don't need the titles. We don't need this vainglory about our station in life, what car we drive or what house we live in, or our clothing or our money or whatever it is. We're all brethren. We're all the same. And we're here to help one another. But now notice, anyone have any comment? Let's go back now to Luke chapter 20, verse 47. Talking about these scribes now. These scribes, notice this, they devour widows' houses. Will devour a widow's house. These folks had no mercy, no shame. They would devour a widow's house, and for a show, they're going to make long prayers. These scribes, these same folks, are going to receive a greater damnation. And I told Andy I was going to depend on him to explain this greater damnation here in just a few minutes, and he said he said he didn't know. And that's me also. But I'm going to try to teach, or what I understand about that, what that greater damnation is. But notice, first of all, these scribes, they're the type of people who are going to devour a widow's house, a widow's stuff, her possessions, not necessarily just her house, not what she lives in, but they're just consume her total possessions. Greedily going to take it from them. A poor widow that is the most defenseless of all, a poor widow that someone who probably needs help, makes no difference to these folks. They're going to devour a widow's house. They show no mercy to nobody. And keep that in mind now. I'm going to pile up a bunch of stuff here now as we try to unravel what this destruction is, this greater damnation is. But keep that in mind, that they showed no mercy to nobody. It didn't matter if there's a poor widow or not. She got a little bit of stuff there, I want it. Several years ago, and probably somebody here will remember this, probably Andy Burnell, just down the road here, within a mile of this building, an old couple lived back there, and the denominational preacher got to where he was visited this old couple almost every Sunday. They got to be noticed in the community. People thought that, well, that's just wonderful. Well, the old couple died, and the relatives came to clean out the house, so to speak, and they discovered canceled checks laid out to the preacher. Even discovered that they had donated him some property, and they sued and got the property back. People don't do that, would they? Yeah, they would. That same preacher went down the road. There's an older man down here. I guess he visited him on the same Sunday, out this way, just we'll get them all. And the same thing happened, They discovered canceled checks. I mean, he was on his knees praying for these old folks while he got maybe the check in his hand, How low can we go? How low, and people do that today. And that's what these folks were doing. They're going to devour the poor widow's house. It doesn't matter about her. You ain't got much longer left, and you want to do something for the synagogue, I'm sure. So, just sort of turn it over to me and I'll handle it for you. That type of thing. Romans chapter 16 and verse 18 says, by good words and fair speeches, that they deceive the minds of the simple, and they serve their own bellies. They're there to get what they can get out of you. 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 3, with vain words, they're going to make merchandise of you. It doesn't matter how little you have, or what, if I can get yours, Linda, I want it too. That's ridiculous. But people would do that. Give it to me and I'll give it to the synagogue. Just make it out to me and I'll make sure the synagogue gets it. These folks are going to receive a greater damnation, or the degrees of punishment. And just shaking her head, yeah. But I'm not prepared to teach it that way, but we'll see. That there might be. I don't know. I'm like Andy. I don't know. These scribes, now let's look at this. I'm going to pile up a bunch of stuff here before we get to the conclusion. Sir?
Have you got Ezekiel 22 on there?
No. Go ahead.
Ezekiel 22 is a prophecy where they talk about the corruption of the priests.
Mm-hmm.
Ezekiel 22:23, I'm going to read down through verse 31.
Okay.
Kind of parallels what we're reading.
Okay.
And the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, say unto her, Thou art the land that is not cleansed, nor rained on the day of indignation. There is a conspiracy of her prophet in the midst thereof, like a roaring lion raving the prey. They have devoured souls. They have taken treasures and precious things. They have made her many widows in the midst thereof. Her priests have violated my law and profaned my holy things. They have put no difference between the holy and the profane. Neither have they showed difference between the clean and the unclean, and have hidden their eyes from my Sabbath. I am profaned among them, saith the Lord. Her princes in the midst thereof are like wolves ravens afraid to shed blood and destroy souls to get dishonest gain. And you skip on down through that chapter, he talks about in that context, they have poured out my indignation upon them. I have consumed them with the fire of my wrath. Their own way have I recompensed against them. That's how those corrupt priests have received a greater condemnation.
Mm-hmm.
They knew better. And what they had done,
Mm-hmm.
God turned it back on them.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read that in Luke 20, verse 47, that's the passage that came to mind. That's how God,
And that's a good one. That's the direction I'm going.
and I think Ezekiel 22 is the best passage in parallel. That's all I gave you with. I blush.
Okay, and I appreciate that. Yeah, that will illustrate the direction I'm heading, Linda, and you may be right, I know. But if there are degrees of punishment, I don't even want the smallest degree. I'm going to try to avoid the smallest one or the biggest one. I really don't care if there are degrees of punishment. I don't want none punishment. But at any rate, let's look at this and try to stay with me as I try to unravel this for us all. All these scribes now. Let's put this into context. This greater damnation with all their pride, wanting to call rabbi, teacher, wearing their long robes, telling people. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 23 and verse 1 or 2, and I forgot. Whatever they tell you, instruct you to do. He said, do that. Do it, because they're teaching you the truth. Do that. But he said, don't do as they do, because they say and they don't do. Don't follow their example, because they're not going to do it. They're going to bind heavy burdens on you. They're not going to lift one finger to do none of that themselves. They were teachers and they were teaching the truth. However, they were practicing what they taught. They're teaching the truth, but their big thing was that they wanted to be noticed. Will a teacher receive a greater condemnation? Sir, ma'am, sorry, ma'am. Who did I hear?
James 3.
Read that.
Yeah.
Read that, Orlando.
Let's go there.
I wondered about that.
James 3 and verse 1. James 3 and verse 1. What did it say, Arlene?
Oh, goodness.
You got it?
No.
You'll have it in just a minute. James 3 and verse 1. Notice what James says about this. Should I be up here trying to teach? I mean, I notice this. This is sort of scary.
Be careful, because where you're headed with this one, we wouldn't have anybody teaching. We would
Well, I
have
know,
anybody
but
preaching.
no, I-
We'd all
I
be
think
afraid to.
I think we can. Go ahead, Arlene, you got it 3 and 1? James 3 and 1?
I got it.
Well, you got a different version. Maybe yours
I
reads.
do.
Yours reads a little different from mine. It's essentially the same thing, though.
My brethren, let not many of you become teachers, knowing that we shall receive a stricter judgment.
A stricter judgment. Okay. Mine said, I'm King James, of course. My brethren, be not many masters, that's teachers, notice it that we, James included himself there, we're going to receive the greater condemnation. Now, Paul said in Hebrews chapter 5 and verse 12 says, you ought to be teachers. But now you still need somebody to teach you. You ought to be teachers. James is saying, don't many of y'all be teachers now.
That's not what he's saying. Paul told Titus, commit these to faithful men that should be able to teach others also.
Okay? So what's James talking about? Burnell, go ahead.
Well, the same words is found in Revelation. He says that whoever practices these sins of the flesh receive greater damnation. I think that's chapter 22 of Revelations there. I
Okay.
believe it is.
Okay? Is
So
that a
they
hard?
warn them 2 or 3 different times there that they're going to receive something they don't like.
Is that going to be a more harsh punishment? Harsher punishment? They're going to be a different part of hellfire then. And that's what I'm getting at. I'm not sure about that. I really don't think so, Linda, but you may be right. Edgar?
Doesn't it teach too, like on the other side of the coin, for an elder or someone who is like get a strong degree of whatever?
Stronger punishment.
Well, not punishment. If he's an elder or keeps one from has one to turn back,
Yeah,
he gets
a greater reward.
no show.
Okay, so yeah, there's something that I done forgot where that is in here.
Not just the opposite one.
No, just 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. 1 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 7, notice what Paul says here. There are some people who want to be teachers. You know, I'm not sure if I want to be a teacher. I'm not sure, Michael, that I am a teacher, but here I am. You know, I hope I'm doing the best that I can do. 1 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 7, there are folks who desire to be teachers of the law. This is the old law, of course. But notice that understanding neither what they're talking about or what they're affirming. They don't know anything about what they're talking about. They want to be a teacher, but they need to be taught too. They're not a teacher. They don't even know what they're talking about. Do we really need to understand what we're teaching in order to be a decent teacher, and in order to be able to teach the truth? We need to be sure of what we're teaching. And that's what I sort of get, Andy, from James chapter 3 and verse 1. Don't many of you become teachers because you may not be able to teach. You look puzzled. You look concerned. If you disagree, tell me, because I do want your input about this greater damnation.
I think what James is saying there is you accept the responsibility of leading others astray. If I preach that you can go to heaven without doing something, and we both die and go to hell, I'm gonna have a hard feeling for you, because Ricky, I led you here. You got your lost, but so have I.
Yeah, yeah, and
that's one way of looking at it. But the other thing, he's warning anyone that's a teacher, an elder, a preacher, whatever you want, a servant that knows the commandments of the Father is under greater weight to obey them, because you have responsibility of it.
Mm-hmm.
With ability comes responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
You'll hear more about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree, and that's the way I'm headed here. If I'm up here teaching something and I don't really know what I'm talking about, maybe, and that may be the case in lots of times now, but I need to have a pretty good understanding of what I'm trying to teach, because I might be teaching something and y'all might be listening to me, and I've led you off in the wrong way, and I might be teaching, just to gain a following. I'm the scribe now. You listen to me because I'm the rabbi. I'm the teacher. Just listen to me and you'll be okay. Well, I might be leading you in the wrong direction, because first of all, I just want you to be a follower of me, because I'm somebody. Notice Matthew chapter 23 and verse 15. Jesus illustrates that here in Matthew chapter 23. They're talking about, again, still talking about these scribes wanting to be rabbis and all these big teachers. Matthew chapter 23 and verse 15. He tells them, "Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, you're a bunch of hypocrites, because you're going to compass sea and land to make one proselyte. And when you made that one proselyte, you're going to make him too foremold a child of hell than yourselves." Well, on the surface, that looks okay. You're going to compass, you're going to go to the ends of the earth to make one proselyte. What's a proselyte?
Converted Jew.
Sir?
Converted Jew.
Okay. So someone who's not familiar with a religion of any kind, we're talking here about the Jewish religion, these rabbis, these teachers, they're going to go make a big effort. And that sounds good. They make a big effort to teach this person who's not familiar with the old law, who's not a Jew. He's going to teach them, convince them to become a believer of what they believe. Well, the problem with that is he only taught him part of it. I've converted him, if you will, and that's what we say, not a proselyte. He's a new convert now, but he only knows what I taught him. And he needs to follow me, because, I'm the one that taught him. And I've made him twice the child of the devil than I am myself. Have I helped the fellow? No. Linda?
But, I had a neighbor. They were Catholics. Wonderful neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
But, the priest tells them not to study the Bible. They don't have to do that.
Yeah.
They can guide them into heaven.
Yeah.
They need to study the Bible.
Yeah. That's good to eat it.
And that's, I mean, they're so ignorant, they don't know anything.
Yes, I understand. We encountered that yesterday at the house.
That's why it's important for us to study.
Ricky, wouldn't it be a blessing, and I use this with quotes around it, if every false teacher suffered condemnation, but those he led astray would be excused from it?
That would be good.
You know,
That would be good.
if I teach you a false doctrine, you get to go to heaven, but I get to go to hell because I was a bad teacher. It don't work that way.
No, it don't, sadly.
Sadly, everybody's going,
Everybody's
because we followed a heresy without proving it.
Right.
Being more noble than those that they search the scriptures daily to see if these things are so. The individual responsibility lies with us.
Yes. And that's the human nature of it. I would rather, Andy, you get up here and tell me what I need to be doing. You know, it's easier for me than having to look at this myself and just tell me, and I'll just do what you say. That's what these scribes wanted. All they did was to be seen of men. And if I have to tell you something that makes you feel good, I'll tell you that.
And that's what they want today.
Yeah, that's what they want today. You know, that's our televangelist today.
How many times have you been studying with someone and they say to you, I didn't know that was in the Bible?
Oh, yeah.
Or you,
Most,
you know, and when you say, take your Bible and turn to this passage and read it, they look at you like, I've been a Christian all my life, I've been a person all my life, I never knew it was there.
yeah,
But they won't refute it, they won't sit down because they believe it all their life.
right. Yeah. And, you know, a lot of people, most of us are lazy. I'd rather hear somebody else can tell me. But that's the reason I emphasize to y'all, and I really mean this. I want y'all to tell me, because I don't know everything, Michael. You figured that out by now. I don't know everything, and I don't want to teach it the wrong way. I don't need any followers for me. Don't follow me, because we're, you know, that's the blind leading the blind. We're both going to fall in the ditch. So y'all tell me what you think. But you know, as the teacher, I have the obligation to try to guide the discussion here. But if it's wrong, tell me, because we don't want to teach something that is wrong. Notice, if you would, Romans chapter 2. Does a teacher have a responsibility of teaching the truth? Does he have a responsibility of practicing what he teaches? These scribes, they taught the truth. Jesus said, whatever they tell you, you do it. But they don't do it themselves. Romans chapter 2, verse 17. Paul, he said, you know, you're called a Jew. You Jew, as a Jew, you rest in the law and you make your boast of God. Well, that's good. Verse 18, you Jew, you know his will. You approve the things that are more excellent. You're being instructed out of the law. Well, that's good. You're confident that you yourself are a guide of the blind and a light of them which are in darkness. That's good. Verse 20, you're an instructor of foolish people. You're a teacher of babes. You have a form of knowledge and of the truth of the law. Well, that's all good. But notice verse 21. What's wrong with that? Thou therefore which teachest another, do you teach yourself? Are you listening to what you teach? You're the teacher, but does this apply to you? Thou that preachest a man should not steal. Do you steal? Verse 22, thou that says a man should not commit adultery. Do you commit adultery? Thou that abhorrest idol, does you commit sacrilege? Verse 20, if you make your boast of the law, but as you break the law, aren't you dishonoring God? Well, yeah, but I'm a teacher, and I'm trying to help other people. Now, you know, do as I do, but don't do as I say, but don't do as I do, because I say and do not. That won't work.
What advice did Paul give you? Be thou an example to all those, you know.
Be an example of a believer. Timothy, we'll go there in just a minute. Are we all teachers? Are we all teachers? We're not taking anything away from Andy in the pulpit here, but you know, the best teaching that we can do is by the lives that we live in front of every people every day.
The best thing you can do is read the book.
Yes. And try to live that in front of other people.
I want to muddy the water a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
What responsibility does the teacher have to the student when he is told he's wrong? When the teacher realizes, I've taught something wrong, what responsibility does the teacher have?
Go tell that person that that was
As much as you can.
as much as you can. Yeah,
And I mean, the responsibility still goes back to the student to prove all things.
yeah.
But you know, I've known preachers that has either left the faith or come back or they've done things wrong. They just go on like nothing ever happened, like sweep it under the carpet and, we won't say anything.
Mm-hmm. Okay, before we run out of time, let's get back to Luke chapter 20, verse 47 now. You know, these folks, in addition to what's already been mentioned, they like to be called rabbi, you know, they want the best seat, you know, they're going to devour a widow's belongings. And for a pretense, they're going to make a long prayer, probably in the presence of that widow that he's talking about. You know, he's kneeled down there and he's going to pray in this widow's presence because he's a man of God. And, you know, he's probably got the check in his hand too while he's praying on his way out the door, but that doesn't make any difference. But you know, for a pretense, you know, a false show, he's pretending it's insincere, this long prayer in front of this this widow here as he's devouring her possessions. You know, the folks that would do that, they're hypocrites. That was Jesus' word. They're going to receive a greater damnation, a greater condemnation. What's the difference between being condemned and receiving damnation? You know, some I think Arlene, your version said there was a stricter judgment, wasn't it? Yeah, is that different? Condemnation. That's when we're going to stand at the judgment seat of Christ and to be declared guilty. And that's when the punishment is going to follow that. The damnation is of course the destruction as a result of the condemnation. But it's going to be the loss of our soul. Romans chapter 8 and verse 1, that there is no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. Notice 1 Corinthians chapter 11. Paul here is going to use those two words sort of interchangeably. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 29, you know, they've disregarded the Lord's Supper. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 21, that he that eateth and drinketh unworthily, eateth and drinketh damnation to himself, not discerning the Lord's body. Notice verse 34, if any man hunger, let him eat at home, that ye come not together unto condemnation. Condemnation being, you know, as a result of your coming together, you're going to be condemned because of what you're doing there. Notice 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 1. We may run out of time here. I'm trying to hurry, but 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 1, notice what the Apostle Peter tells us here. False teachers, false prophets, also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you. They're privately going to bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that bought them. And notice that they're going to bring upon themselves swift destruction. Greater damnation or swift destruction, is that the same thing? Or, you know what? Their destruction is going to be swift. It's going to be greater than mine, or I'm going to be condemned and lost too, but they're going to be more swift. They're going to get their punishment before me, or I don't think so. Maybe we're reading something else in there that shouldn't be there. Go with it, James chapter 2 now. And again, I know I'm piling up a bunch of stuff here. James chapter 2 and verse 13. A person who shows no mercy. These scribes who are devouring widows' houses, are they showing any mercy to anybody? They compass land and sea to make one proselyte. You know, bring your money too while you're coming to the temple. They had no shame, no mercy on nobody. The person is going to have judgment without any mercy that have shown no mercy. But mercy will rejoice or triumph against judgment. These people, and I told you back then when I mentioned mercy, remember that now. They showed no mercy, even to a widow. It just didn't matter to them. You know, James chapter 2, verse 13, without mercy, no mercy, mercy is going to rejoice or triumph over in judgment. These folks showed no mercy to anybody. But they were quick to condemn them folks. I'm sure if they wouldn't listen to what they were told to do, they judged those folks very harshly. They condemned them very harshly. But they showed no mercy. Judged the people without any mercy towards them. These rabbis probably would have condemned their own mama. You know, but that would have helped them. Matthew chapter 5 and verse 7, Jesus said, "Blessed are the merciful, for they're going to receive mercy." These folks showed no mercy. Mercy is a great attribute of God, just like God's grace, God's mercy. It's all the same. Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 4, God is rich in mercy. James chapter 5 and verse 11, God, the Lord, has compassion and tender mercy. Luke chapter 6 and verse 36, be merciful as God is merciful. God is not willing that any should perish, but everybody should repent and change. He has compassion, mercy for everybody. God's intention for us is to show mercy, to show forgiveness, that we might receive God's grace. But in order to receive mercy and judgment, I got to be a person who shows mercy. You know, when these folks get to the judgment seat of God that have shown no mercy, these false teachers, these scribes, these rabbis, who are me, you know, I'm teaching all this so I can gain followers for me, and I don't teach the bad parts. You know, we'll just teach what makes everybody feel good. I didn't show any mercy toward you. I didn't teach you all of it. Is God going to show me any mercy? What if I'm the person who have tried to do the best that I can do, and have tried to show mercy towards other people, and as I have gotten older, I think that I've sort of developed that, maybe, Linda, maybe not years ago, because I was young and knew everything back then. But I've learned a little bit, and I can show mercy and compassion when I stand for the judgment seat of Christ now. I hope I get mercy. Do I want justice?
No.
No. I want mercy. God's mercy, notice the end of the verse there. God's mercy is going to triumph over judgment, over justice.
You want mercy supplied by grace.
Yes. Absolutely.
Think about that. Mercy supplied by grace.
Mm-hmm. We're going to be saved by grace through our faith. And when I get there, I want mercy, and I hope that I've shown mercy. These folks who have shown no mercy, how swift is there? Is God going to have to think of anything here about these folks who have shown no mercy? Their judgment's going to be swift? Swift just like that? Yeah.
It's going to be predetermined.
Predetermined. Ain't going to have to think about it. Won't even be considered. They're going to receive swift judgment. Their damnation is going to be great. The Lord's not going to take into consideration. Well, you know, they were merciful people at times. No, they never were. They never were. You'll be judged without any mercy if you've shown no mercy in this life to nobody. Took advantage of widows, did whatever you can. Taught people what they needed to do just so they would be followers of me. Didn't teach them all that they needed to know because, you know, they might not want that part, but I can teach them so far as what they want to know. There will be no mercy shown to those people. Their destruction will be swift. It will be great. No consideration given to them as they stand before the judgment seat of Christ. That's what I get out of the greater damnation. No consideration will be given to those type of people. God won't even have to think about it.
But their condemnation will be the same as the murderer,
Yes.
the thief,
Yes.
the crook.
Yes.
There is clearly stated there is not degrees of punishment in the world.
No, I don't think there is myself.
You know, we had a couple of dear old ladies here, whatever, me and my mom. Honey, I just want to get the back door down, boy. Just let me get in the back door.
Yeah.
I'll be all right.
If I can hold the door open for you, I'll hold the door open for everybody else.
If I get in the back door, you might as well come in. We're all going to be in the presence of God.
Yeah.
You know, there's not going to be any agreements there.
Yeah. Yes. Linda?
So, okay, so if we are sent to hell, we're everyone should be punished the same as, everything's the same.
Yes, I think so, in my opinion.
Well, then,
Good, that's the question. That's the question.
But tell me what you think, because you may be right now. I don't, don't say that, Ricky's right. Well, Ricky may be wrong.
Go about the question of grace and punishment, and I'm on your time, or, the fact being that, whether we weep and gnash of teeth, it doesn't say, it's all the same, it's eternal punishment. It's absence from the presence of God. It's absence from His blessing.
Yeah.
And that's gonna make the turbulence of hell, it's gonna be bad.
We got into a discussion at the house here a few days ago that, there is no punishment in hellfire. Our punishment is going to be just annihilation, and you will know that you're not in God's presence. That's going to be your punishment.
I think it's more than that.
Well, I do too. The poor old rich man with Lazarus in Abraham's bosom, he been in the torment of those flames for thousands of years. And when the Lord comes right now, this instant, and I'm lost, well, he was in torment forever, suffering, but I'm just going to be annihilated. Well, that's pretty
It
good.
talks about the devil being reserved in judgment for eternity.
Yeah.
Eternity.
No, I didn't know.
Hell is just as long as heaven is.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that's a new trend going around in the churches now, that there is no punishment in
And
hell.
I think to some degree it's going around the Lord's church.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean. That don't sound too bad to me. There's no punishment, no torment, no fire. I'm just not in God's presence, but I had a good time in this life, enjoyed myself in it.
well, what's going around in the church?
That there is no hellfire punishment. My punishment will be I will not be in God's presence. I'm just going to be totally annihilated at my death, and that's it. I don't do that. All right, thank you for your help this morning. Luke chapter 21, Lord willing, we'll start there next week.
Edgar's not here.